to the
to the
cloud.
cloud.
There we go. All right. So I am here with my DBA colleague, Michael. And first, I just wanted to start with you have a really interesting background. So can you tell everyone a little bit about your career so far?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'm originally from Tyler, Texas, which is about 90 miles east of Dallas. And if you've heard of Tyler, Texas, it's either because it's the rose capital of the world, all right, or Earl Campbell, the professional football player, who I happen to grow up with. But I went to Tyler Junior College. I really hadn't decided what I wanted to do. I grew up thinking I wanted to go into architectural drafting, and so what I decided to do was to get two associate degrees, an
Hmm.
associate of science in drafting, and then an associate of arts in case I decided to go on to a bachelor's degree. So it took me 3 years to do that. And then I decided to go on and get a bachelor's, and I transferred to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where I received my bachelor's degree. And then there decided that I wanted to do an MBA in marketing
Hmm.
and went straight from undergraduate to Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta full time and did my MBA. And between my first and second year of the MBA program, I approached IBM about a summer internship, and they put me in their marketing management department for a new computer program targeting small businesses called AIM, Automated Instructional Marketing. And
Hmm.
I had a responsibility for that program and getting it executed across the United States. And I did such a great job that summer. They said, we want to keep you on your entire second year of graduate business school, and we'll let you write your own schedule. You can be part
Wow.
time. Okay. Now, they had ulterior motives because they wanted to hire me once I got my MBA, and I understood that. But I grew up loving the auto industry. When I was very small, I used to sketch cars. I still sketch cars now. And I really wanted to do that, but it was a 2 year degree back then. And my mother said, you have two-year degrees. What sense does it make to get a third 2 year degree? She
Right.
said, if you really want to work in the car industry and have a shot to go to the highest levels in the company, get an MBA. And so that's what I did.
That's good
And
advice.
it was great advice. It was. My mom was a pioneer. She was the first African American medical technologist in East Texas. Okay. And she had a 45-year career. Okay.
Wonderful.
Um, so she always gave you good advice, professional advice and counsel. So this is what's interesting, and you'll find this fascinating. I knew I had the IBM offer in my hand, but I wanted to pursue the auto industry. So I interviewed with both General Motors, Cadillac Motor Car Division in marketing, and Lincoln Motor Car with Ford.
Hmm.
And it just so happened that one of my church members in Atlanta, who was an HR corporate executive, his best friend headed up HR for Lincoln. Okay.
Nice.
So I went up, I interviewed with both. Um, he and his fiance invited me over to their home that night. Now, he lived in a very nice neighborhood in Detroit. As a matter of fact, he lived in a home of a former mayor. So it was an historic home with a coach house out back, with a large garage, multiple car garage. And this was in 81 in the midst of the downturn in the economy.
Hmm.
And we pulled into the driveway in his new Lincoln, okay, company car, and two guys ran up in the driveway with a gun and
Wow.
robbed us. Yes. And so they made us lay down on the concrete of the driveway. And, it was interesting because they saw us as people who were well to do. Okay. Now we were all black, but we were the enemy. We were well to do. Look at these guys. See what I'm
But
saying?
still, you were looking for the job. I mean, you were just getting started. So that
That's
must
right. But
hurt
but
to,
based on how we were dressed, in business suits, his fiance was dressed nicely. We were fortunate. They didn't have on masks. They didn't make us go in the house. And they had a car waiting. And Sylvester's from there, and he was incensed. He had never been robbed before, and he wanted to get in the car and follow them.
oh,
And
wow.
his girlfriend said, "That's not a good idea, Sylvester. Let's just call the police." Now they took my briefcase with all my schoolwork. Okay. So what's interesting is, and they took my wallet, of course. When I got back to school, with about a week and a half later, They had thrown my wallet away with my driver's license and my school ID. That came back to me.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
But what's
So
interesting
some
is,
good Samaritan found it and
yes, but what's interesting is that really frightened me off of Detroit.
right.
Okay. So I wouldn't have taken a job with the auto industry in Detroit after that happened to me. And I took the job with IBM.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So
Even though
the,
your heart was in the auto industry,
that's
you
correct. I figured maybe down the road.
hmm
Okay. Now, the thing that I didn't like about IBM is I was doing a marketing management job, okay, as an MBA student. And I thought I would end up in that department permanently. But at IBM, Big Blue says everybody has to go through sales positions. Okay. And I told Chuck Rylander, who was my manager, I said, listen, Chuck, look, I'm a marketing guy. I'm not a sales guy. I'll try this out, but if I don't like it, I won't stay. All right. And I tried it out from July until February, and I did not like it. They have a almost like a regimented training process, like being in the military, and they call themselves breaking you down, to make you Big Blue, and it was just insulting to me.
yeah, yeah, that's wild. I wonder
Okay,
if they couldn't still run it like that today.
no, because think about it. Now they are a consulting company.
Right,
They're
right.
not a sales company. Okay, all that went away. So I decided, I turned and said, I need to get back into mainstream marketing. And the Coca-Cola company's international headquarters is Atlanta. And so I went to Coca-Cola and ended up in brand management marketing for Coca-Cola USA, the domestic division. I had Cherry Coke, I had Minute Maid Orange Soda, and I had Fresca. And that was a phenomenal experience because you manage the ad agencies on Madison Avenue for the brands, as well as all the marketing and all of the promotion for the actual brands across the United States.
Hmm.
So that was excellent. But the car industry kept calling me, and what I said I was going to originally do was work for the industry and then become an automobile dealer, an entrepreneur. Okay,
hmm
that was my goal years ago. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to apply. General Motors had a program called the Minority Dealer Development Program. And it just so happened that the first black Cadillac dealer opened his store in Atlanta, and I met him when I was a grad student.
Hmm.
And so I went out to the store, Mr. Robinson, he's a great gentleman. And he said, Michael, I can refer you to the program if you're interested. He referred me, I got in.
Hmm.
Okay. So I left Coca Cola and was then being trained to become an automobile dealer. Now, that was about a 2 year training program. You go
Two
back and forth.
years. Wow.
Yes. You go back and forth to Detroit. They have different modules where you learn, the front end of the business, the back end of the business. Okay, you learn everything about the business, and you're assigned to a dealer locally. So when you're not in Detroit, you're in that dealership and you're managing those different departments so that you can learn how to run that dealership. Okay, this is interesting. 16 of us were in my class. When it was time for us to graduate, they then showed us dealerships to purchase. The way it worked was this: you put up 15% of the money and they loan you 85%. But the way the deal worked was if the deal went south, you lost your 15% first.
Hmm.
Okay. I thought they would be giving us an opportunity to purchase brand new dealerships. They were not. They were selling us inner city dealerships that the dealers wanted to move to the suburbs and build new stores. So
Oh, they were pawning off the
that is
unwanted.
correct. Those dealerships that were in decline.
Wow.
Okay.
Hey, that
Now,
could be a book right there.
okay,
Wow.
so my grandfather was a very successful entrepreneur, my mom's dad. And he said to me, Michael, you worked hard for your money. He said, I'd go real slow on this because you see the way they have it set up. If it goes south, you're going to lose your 15%, okay, up front. And I looked at stores, all the stores they showed me were in serious financial trouble,
Hmm.
and I didn't invest.
And with maybe your MBA training, you could read the balance sheets maybe a little more savvy than people who are just seeing the dream.
That
So,
is correct. Now,
hmm.
out of 16 of us, three didn't invest. 13 did. How many do you think went out of business in the first year?
First year, three.
Try 11.
What? In the first year? Oof.
Correct. That's
Wow.
how bad those assets were.
Hmm.
Okay. So the best thing I could have ever done was not to invest in that GM dealership. Okay. Once again, I had to pivot. It just so happened one of my good friends who worked at IBM, see, Atlanta went for the Centennial Games, and everybody said that's going to Athens. That's never going anyplace else. But guess what? Atlanta won it. Okay. On the third vote, Atlanta won it. And I ran into Ellie and I said, Ellie, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm still at IBM, but I'm heading purchasing for the 1996 Olympic Games. I said, Ellie, I would love to work in marketing with the 96 Games. He said, well, you remember Dorothy Grayson in HR at IBM? I said, of course I remember Dorothy. He said, well, she's heading up HR for the Olympics. She's on loan from IBM. He put me in contact with Dorothy. Dorothy remembered me. She interviewed me, and I became the first sponsor marketing director for the 96 Games, responsible for negotiating the $40 million worldwide sponsorships. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a phenomenal experience. A lot of those sponsors were international, a lot of them were in Europe. And, I traveled the world for the Olympics. And then not only did I negotiate those deals, then I had to manage their involvement with the games because they spent, $40 million to get across the entrance door. But then they probably spent another two or $300 million, to monetize the games, you see?
Wow.
And I had to approve all of that. So it was really great. It was a great experience. I kind of likened it to World War II soldiers from the United States who had never really been abroad and then went to Europe to fight the war. And they saw a world they'd never seen before. Okay. Although I had traveled internationally, not to the extent that I got to travel for the Olympics. All right. And I said, you know what? It's kind of like the GIs. I'm doing this on somebody else's dollar. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's
that was a
remarkable.
4-year contract. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I, I said it's a remarkable story to work in the Olympics because it's just about knowing the right person at the right time.
That's correct. I mean, running into the right person at the right time is correct. That was a 4-year contract. And probably what I'm most proud of is the Olympic torch run is something that's very special, and very few people get the opportunity to do it. But I was selected as a torch runner by virtue of the contributions I made to the games in marketing. So they let you run the torch anywhere in the world that you want to run it. Um, and I wanted to run it in Texas. I really did. It didn't go through Tyler, but it went through Beaumont, which is where my dad was from.
Hmm.
And so, all my family turned out to see me run the torch. And you can purchase the actual torch, and
Hmm.
I have the commemorative torch. And today it's worth about 25,000.
Wow, that's pretty cool. You got to, and I guess Muhammad Ali, I think, was in the '96.
That's
I
correct.
remember that.
You remember, he lit the
Yeah.
torch that night at opening ceremonies,
Yeah.
and we kept it hush hush. Nobody knew it was going to be him. Okay. And that was really great because if you look at the fact that when he was an Olympian, segregation was still, about in the United States. And for him to do what he did, even after they stripped him of his title because he wanted to not fight in Vietnam. I mean, he was a Muslim minister, and they would not allow him to claim that, and they stripped him of his title. But he guess what? He got it back, and he continued to do well. So yeah.
So after the Olympics, where would be the next stop on your career path?
Well, when I was in graduate business school, before I contacted IBM, I had contacted the headquarters of Mercedes-Benz USA and BMW USA and asked, did they have summer internship programs? They did not. However, the head of Mercedes-Benz Human Resources wrote me back. Her name was Roberta Miller. She said, Michael, if you really want to work for Mercedes one day, then just get some domestic automotive experience and come back to us. So I went back to them after the Olympics.
Hmm.
Okay.
Interesting.
And what's interesting is this German companies tend to be very insular. Normally at the top of the divisions that are domestic are going to be Germans. They're not going to be American. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the way it works under that, then we come in. But what they did was I explained to them that I needed to come in at a certain level. Okay. I wasn't just going to come in at a regular level with my experience and my background.
Hmm.
And so, sure enough, they offered me the opportunity to become head of presence marketing for the entire United States.
Wow.
And that covered several areas, and I'll share with you what they were. All of Hollywood, so the motion picture, television, and music industry, entertainment marketing and product placement for that. All
Hmm.
right. All sports marketing. So that was Formula One racing. That was men's ATP tennis, and then men's PGA golf, and then all sponsorships, Mercedes-Benz sponsorships across the United States.
Wow.
So I had about $100 million budget. I had several agencies reporting to me, and a very large staff. And so I became head of presence marketing. It made me the highest ranking African American ever hired in the history of Mercedes-Benz.
Wow. That's very impressive. So with this illustrious career, what brought you to doing a DBA? Why a Doctor of Business Administration?
Well, once I got the MBA, I always said I wanted a terminal degree.
Hmm.
And I thought about trying to do it when I was at Mercedes part time, but I was traveling internationally, so back and forth to Germany, all over the world with Formula One. I really didn't have time to do it. And so I didn't do it. Okay. When I left, while I was at Mercedes, I started my own marketing consulting firm. I also taught marketing at New York University, Fairleigh Dickinson University. So I always had other things going on the side along with my corporate career.
Hmm.
Okay. So when I left Mercedes Benz, I said, maybe I need to go back and get the terminal degree. But understand this: the DBA then was not even a degree. I was looking at a PhD in business, and that's a 5 year degree. Okay. And in 2009, I almost pulled the trigger on it, but I didn't do it. Okay. I was teaching marketing at Florida Atlantic University in Boca, teaching at both the Boca campus and Davie campus. Okay. I was running my marketing consulting firm. And then the reason that I really didn't do it, though, my mom was diagnosed in '09 with Alzheimer's in
Hmm.
Tyler, Texas. She was retired there, and I knew I was going to have to move her here. Okay.
Understood.
And yes, and became her full time caregiver. For 5 years, she was in a retirement apartment in Aventura. I lived in Sunny Isles, so I was able to check on her. But she unfortunately began to walk away.
Hmm.
So I ended up having to move in with her,
Hmm.
and take care of her. So it's good I didn't start that degree.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Then eventually they said my mom was a flight risk. I understood it, and she needed to go to a nursing home. And I had met the number two Alzheimer's doctor in the country who is here in Miami. He's at Miami Jewish. He had come to Florida Atlantic University and did a conference on Alzheimer's. And my mom was still in Texas then. I said, my mom is the third generation in her family to get it. He said, if you can get her to move here, I will take her on as a patient.
Hmm.
And true to his word, he did. And I'm telling you, the care that he gave her, she was able to live another 5 years by herself.
Wow.
Okay. So she knew that campus at Miami Jewish because that's where his doctor's office was. So it was a smooth transition to put her in the nursing home. Okay.
Hmm.
And that worked out real good. And it was July of 18, I picked up a Miami Herald and I saw that Florida International University was starting a DBA program. And I said, this is it. And I applied. And I was supposed to be in cohort one, but I'll tell you what happened. The person responsible for recruiting told me that they did not accept electronic um, electronic grades from your undergraduate or your graduate program. They had to be hard copy grades.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, see, that for that first cohort, there was a short window, to get everybody in. and those hard copies didn't get back.
Hmm.
Come to find out, she gave me the wrong information. And Dr. Maraca said, Michael, you're the first to be accepted in cohort 2 because you should have been in cohort 1. So that's how I got in cohort 2, which I think is a better cohort anyway.
Yeah, I agree. So you get into the DBA, you're successful in the DBA. What would you say to a prospective student? What did you learn in the program which you didn't know before? How did the DBA expand your horizons?
Let me say this much. The thing that I loved about the DBA program is it taught you how to look at problems in different ways. Okay. Normally in business, we come up with 2 or 3 solutions that we think will work, and then we select the one that we think is the best one. With a DBA program, there are multiple options, and you really learn how to turn things over and look at those options from different angles, and how to really unfurl the problem even more and see how the myriad of solutions could be used in different ways. Now that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's well said. So what was your dissertation about in the end?
What factors influence consumer use of fully autonomous vehicles in the United States? That was my research question.
And what did you find? How do consumers feel about fully autonomous vehicles?
It's interesting. The consumers are ahead of the automakers and the autonomous vehicles development companies. They want the technology, so much so that they're trying to use the semi-autonomous technology as if it's full technology, fully autonomous technology. And of course, as you know, it's causing accidents, it's causing deaths. All right. So I say that they, unfortunately, the industry thought they had to first get the technology right before they begin to communicate to consumers about the technology and the benefits of the technology. The two should have been going down a dual track at the same time. Then you wouldn't have had all this resonance about, is this fully autonomous? Is this not fully autonomous? Oh, it's called autopilot, so it's got to be able to drive itself.
Yeah, full self-driving.
It's called full
Right.
self-driving. Okay. So listen, from a marketing standpoint, all right, and I'm a marketer, I want to be the marketing expert for fully autonomous vehicles and shared fully autonomous vehicles. And so now I'm going to pivot to my next phase of research, and that is what marketing stimuli will influence consumers to use fully autonomous and shared vehicles. And I'm going to be doing a postdoctoral research fellowship in marketing to accomplish that research.
And that would not have been available without your DBA that you.
Well, I will say this because Vanderbilt University is who is recruiting me, and the head of the program is a very sharp lady. And she called me after I emailed her. She said, Michael, we have never had anybody work on how you market a new consumer technology. So this is exciting. Okay. So they see the benefit.
Absolutely. Well, I think that this has been a really interesting conversation. Are there any other thoughts you have about the DBA program? I guess my last question is, if you could change or reshape DBA education in any way, how would you do that? If you were in charge of a DBA program?
Well, I think that it needs to be a little bit more hands-on as it relates to things like SPSS. See, you need to have a lab that the students can actually get on the computer. That's something that you just can't teach in a textbook. Okay, the professor needs to teach the textbook, but also pivot and take them to the lab and let them have hands-on experience.
Well, I agree completely because when I'm an educator, when I teach, I'm always in a lab. I would never just lecture on something you're working on the computer. Maybe when computers were $1 million, you'd have to do that. But now that computers are everywhere, yeah, certainly That's a good point.
And that's feedback I've given Dr. Maracas, sure. The other thing is marketing is not anything that's significant in the DBA program, and I think it needs to have more of a prominence. And I've told them that. Unfortunately, they've removed the marketing class right now in the DBA
Really?
program.
No more marketing
That is
whatsoever?
correct. They decided to substitute it with something else. And he tells me that they may bring it back, but it's not there. We only had one marketing class, remember?
Yeah, I remember it.
Okay. So, I would make sure that it touched all of the key areas of business. All right. And so that when you graduate, you have a very good, not only knowledge, but hands-on experience in those areas.
Yeah.
And I will share a bit of advice for students who are coming along. I say dream and dream big. All right. Understand this. If you don't prepare yourself, you will probably never get an opportunity. But if you prepare yourself, then you are qualified and you may very well get the opportunity. So always prepare yourself, over prepare yourself. Okay. So that if that opportunity comes along and they see you and you have got what it takes, you get the opportunity. That's the story of my life. Okay. I worked my way through undergraduate working for the Postal Service.
Really?
I started part-time. It was a postal assistant position. And when they did away with it, they said, either you have to just quit or you can come full-time. I worked full-time at the post office and went to school full-time.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I did that enough to know this. I didn't mind the 8 hours. And I knew that once I got home at midnight, I had to study. I didn't mind that. But they required within 10 minutes of you punching out of the clock, if the supervisor walks by and taps you on the shoulder, you had to work 2 or 3 more hours. I had a problem with that. And I said, if I have to stay in school until I'm 30, I do not want to have a job like this. Okay. That motivated me. All right. So, once again, don't settle for what's easy. Always choose what's hard. Because guess what? That's where you grow and you learn, is when it's hard.
That is true. That is true. Well, this has been great. Perhaps I'll link to your LinkedIn below this YouTube video. Maybe
I'd be happy for you to do that. And if any of the students want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, feel free to do that.
All right. Well, thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Well, David, it was a great pleasure, and I hope it was helpful.
I think it's going to be great.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. You take care. We'll be in touch.